First of all, what is reality? Have we ever truly asked ourselves what this word means? So often in our experience we say, this is true, this is real. But what do the words true and real mean in the first place? For everything that will follow, I invite you at a certain point to go beyond what I am saying and ask yourself directly, what does the word itself mean? What is its etymology? How many possible meanings are there? Nowadays, this expression resonates strongly, especially in the context of physics and new science, with reference to quantum physics. It is something we also encounter in very famous movies such as The Matrix, the idea that there is a reality which does not exist in the way it appears, and therefore appears as illusory, the concept of illusory reality. This very idea, that what we perceive may not correspond to what actually exists, has been explored for centuries in Buddhist philosophy, where different schools present increasingly refined analyses of reality. Before entering the Madhyamaka tradition, it is important to mention the earlier philosophical schools. We can distinguish the Vaibhasika, the particularists, and the Sautrantika, the sutra followers. Their view approach is somewhat similar to what we also find in Theravāda Buddhism. For example, the particularists argue against the illusory of things by analyzing objects in terms of their smallest particles. If the object we observe is conceptually divided into infinitely small parts, even just mentally, until its perceiver can't identify it anymore, then it means that the object does not exist in the way it appears. If it truly existed as such, it should remain exactly as it is even under the analysis of the perceiver. The Sautantrikas have a different way of analysis that brings the searcher to discover that in whatever is produced, in all things, there is a subtle constant process of change and impermanence that can't be observed or caught by our usual perception. And so it brings to identity that the idea of permanence we conceive on things is just a concept. This reasoning lays the foundation for the understanding of impermanence and the rejection of permanence as an illusion. From here, analysis develops further with the Siddhamatra school where, in their observation, objects are not atomically established, but just essentially in the entity of the mind, even if mistakenly appear as being something separate and distinct, and then rises into the Madhyamaka schools, which become increasingly complex and refined. Many of you may have heard of Nagarjuna and the concept of emptiness, sunyata. The essential point of those last two schools is this: anything lacks of true existence. Each school defines reality differently. So to understand how they present the non-existence of things as they appear, one must first understand the concept that each school gives to true existence. In Madhyamaka, the two main subdivisions are Svatantrika and Prasangika. In the Svatantrika school, the concept of true existence is explained as, if something truly existed, it should exist independently of a cognizer, a perceiver that apprehends it, a non-deceptive perceiver. But nothing can be determined that way without being known. Therefore, anything that exists must depend on the perceiver that perceives it, and thus cannot be truly existent. Going deeper, the Prasangika school further explains that if something truly existed, it should not depend on the imputation of the mind, on definitions, or on other relational contexts like parts or causes. It should exist completely on its own, independently. But nothing is ever completely independent. All things depend on causes and conditions, on being known by a cognizer, on the definitions and names attributed to them. Something is known to be low only in relation to something high, cold in relation to something warm, the need to depend on multiple parts to be a single thing, and so on. Here it is important to clarify a common misunderstanding. When we say that reality is an illusion, it does not mean that nothing exists at all. There is a big difference between saying that something does not exist and saying that it does not exist in the way it appears. What is denied is not the existence of things, persons, or perceptions themselves, but the way in which they exist. By recognizing this cognitive distortion in perception, we can gradually enter more deeply into our own nature. This allows us to uncover and eliminate the distortions that prevent us from evolving our inner qualities. The purpose of developing these qualities is not to become someone expert, with a special knowledge to show up in themselves, but to remove the obstacles that block the genuine happiness we are all searching for. Every one of us desires to be happy, to be free from even the smallest suffering, and to feel special. The real point is to reach this state in a genuine way, in harmony with reality itself. It is not enough to only listen to or read these explanations. In Buddhist training, there are traditionally 3 phases: listening, receiving the teachings, hearing the explanations, becoming familiar with the words; reflecting, analyzing what has been heard, questioning it, reasoning about it, seeing if it holds true in your own experience; meditating, internalizing the understanding so that it becomes part of your direct experience, not just intellectual knowledge. Only by going through these 3 stages can understanding become transformation. Beyond whether one identifies as Buddhist or not, I invite people to consider the usefulness of these philosophical schools. They were developed by thinkers who devoted their lives to benefiting humanity, and they can still offer us powerful insights into what we are, what we truly want, and how we can develop our potential. The benefit and utility of these teachings inspires to keep going deeper, not for the sake of labels, but for the sake of a personal understanding that helps inner grow. I invite you to discover it. Curiosity is enough. You do not need to make promises or take sides. Simply explore these insights and see what they open up in your own mind. In today's world, our analytical mind is constantly stimulated, often negatively, by social media, by the flood of contradictory information we receive, and by the noise of modern life. Yet the analytical mind itself is not the problem. When we learn how to direct it constructively, it becomes a precious tool for our inner well-being. It's a tool of a very ancient, precious wisdom that passed through many centuries and uninterrupted generations of ancestors. Until now, that was kept as a patrimony for the humanity that can be perfectly connected with nowadays world. Used wisely, analysis can sharpen the mind like a whetstone sharpens a blade. And with a sharper, clearer mind, we can work more deeply within ourselves and more authentically in how we relate to the world around us.